Hi, welcome to the outlet. This is episode 6, and we're going to be discussing the current state of the drug war. I'm Mac.
I'm Drew. Some people, I guess, call it drug war. Some people call it prohibition. Either way, it's a way that the state uses to dominate us in our everyday lives and to kind of extort us. Our early, more recent generations have started to see the drug war kind of for what it is, especially through the legalization of marijuana and the hypocrisy of the DEA and all of the propaganda that's been pushed on us for so long, stigmatizing marijuana, something really terrible. As people start to see what it really is, especially the more recent generations, there's an actual conversation starting to start, about what is the drug war? What is its purpose? Does it even need to exist? So,
Yeah, and that's almost kind of a reincarnation of what occurred in the '60s, but that movement was squashed pretty hard, and a lot of people from that generation are uh, not really pro psychedelics because they saw all the abuse of psychedelics back then and the overuse. Probably, maybe that's arguable. What I just said there. But I think we went through a time where there was a start there in the '60s. It appears there was, we started to see that shift in thinking on the drug war, but it was squashed pretty hard, and the drug war has continued very strong to this day. We saw the cocaine and crack epidemic of the '80s,
mm-hmm.
and the rise of the cartels, like the Medellin cartel, and the rise of the crack epidemic, and tons of gang-related activity through that. A lot of money there. And, more recently, I think it started in California when they legalized medical marijuana. I believe that was the late '90s.
Mm-hmm.
And now, the current state is we have 28 states and Washington, D.C., who have approved legalized medical marijuana. I think that's got to be the biggest change of the drug war. And despite that, at the state level, the federal level has continued to keep the drugs scheduled in the exact same way. They've added more drugs to Schedule 1 in the last 20, 30 years,
Mm-hmm.
and they have not changed any of their policies except for the only thing they've changed is how much they enforce those policies, I believe. Would you
And
agree with that?
yeah, remembering too, Schedule One means that one of its meanings is that drug or substance has no medical value whatsoever. That's one of the stipulations of that
Yeah, and
Schedule One
so
status.
the federal government says marijuana is Schedule 1, but 28 out of 50 states have said that's absolutely false.
Definitely. Yep. And I think it's important to mention too, like you said, of those 28 states that have the medical marijuana legislation or permission, I guess, allowing permission for their citizens to use marijuana medically. There's only a small percentage of those states who have actually brought their systems to fruition so that they actually provide.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the exact number, but I'm guessing it may be around 10 or so of those states where you can actually legally purchase
Mm-hmm. It's
medical
pretty.
marijuana. At least it has definitely led to decriminalization, I think, in all those states.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely starting to, which
Yeah,
makes the argument that why even start with medical? Why not just decriminalize?
yeah. So this movement has occurred at the state level, and for the most part, it has not been funded by big business at all. It's been a grassroots movement. I would certainly say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Um, I think as the stigma starts to be lifted, as people start to see more and more people come out against it, then the people who smoke come out of the closet basically, and they just
Yeah,
start. They come from everywhere. There's all types of
for
people.
sure. A very high percentage of our population has used or currently uses marijuana. Not sure what the numbers are lately, but it's like you're saying, a lot more people are coming out of the closet and admitting their use.
Definitely, yeah, there's a lot.
A lot of athletes, even, or I
Mm-hmm.
mean, obviously, celebrities and rock stars have not been shy on their drug use for a very long time. But you have a lot of athletes who are trying in the NFL. They're trying to
Yep.
get it approved to treat concussions. That's really
Te-
interesting.
teachers. CEOs,
Yeah, it's almost you can almost say you use marijuana now and you're not stigmatized at all for it
fast
in many
food
circles.
workers, retail. I mean, everybody. I mean, it's not hard to find. Not hard to find people that do that. So, um, I think it's funny though that okay, here we are in probably the height of the drug war. Maybe we're coming down the top of the
I
crest
think yeah, I would think we're coming down the top of the crest.
as far as how intense it has been. But the whole point of the drug war was to get as close to eliminating drugs as possible. But here we are, coming down the crest of the height of the drug war, and there are more drugs around. There's drugs everywhere.
Right.
They're
If that
they're
was
all
the aim of the drug war to decrease drugs and drug use, it is there's no way you can classify it as anything but an epic failure.
yes,
So I guess
and
let's take a look at let's discuss briefly this video isn't really about the history of it of the drug war, but let's look at the current state of the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, who's the main government agency who is trying to eliminate drugs and drug use. And currently, they have a $2 billion budget. Actually, it's greater than $2 billion annually that they get to use. They have a lot of very high paid agents. It's actually very difficult to become a DEA agent. You need to go through pretty significant training, and just to get in, you have to. I think you have to have a pretty good resume. You probably have to have a college degree. I'm not sure on that. It's They have a lot of competition just to get a job there. So the DEA is part of the Department of Justice, which has a $29 billion annual budget. So there's a lot of federal money being spent on the drug war aimed at reducing drugs and prosecuting those who are transporting and using the drugs.
well, yeah, their charter being to reduce drugs. That's in very sarcastic, big quotations because look at that whole situation on paper. If drugs didn't exist, if those laws didn't exist, then those people would have no jobs. So while they say, yeah, we're trying to eliminate drugs, the whole idea is that the existence of drugs fuels the existence of that entity. So
Absolutely.
they need the drugs to continue to have a purpose. If there were no drugs, then they would not have a purpose and
Right.
technically should be dissolved. So there is an incentive for them to keep drugs on the street when they might say, okay, yeah, we're going to take the drugs up. We're going to get all the drugs out. We're going to clean the streets up. We're going to arrest all those criminals, all these criminals that we've created by writing these brand new shiny laws that say you're a criminal now. By
Yeah.
the way, who is the victim in a nonviolent drug crime? That is the most.
That's I think that's the fundamental question everybody needs to ask themselves.
So if you're in court for a nonviolent drug offense, then who is the victim in that crime? Who's the
The
plaintiff and who's
victim
the
is the taxpayer paying for all this legal trouble. What a big waste of money
the
for everybody
plaintiff?
involved.
It's the state versus you. It's the
Yeah.
state saying, okay, you can't put this into your body. You can't do this. You can't do that. Why not? Why don't they start regulating what we eat? Why don't they start regulating,
Right.
how long we sleep?
And we haven't seen a reduction in drug users and abusers based on their actions. So in that
No,
regard, it's been a failure as well.
exactly.
But it's
And
punished a lot of them financially. It's punished the drug users financially. It's punished the taxpayers financially. And if you're addicted to drugs, it doesn't necessarily get you off of the drugs.
mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a lose lose lose.
It is. Somebody's benefiting from it.
Well, the real winner is those transporting the drugs, making tons of money in the black market
If they don't get caught.
if they don't get caught, or if they
The
have the
real
right connections when they get caught.
the real winner is the state in all of this. The real
Right.
winner is the state because they make money off of those laws being in place, off of being able to enslave you, off of the idea that the drug war exists. So cops have all of these incentives to be able to pull you over. They can say, "Well, we had suspicion that you might be on drugs." If the drug war didn't exist, how would cops be able to pull you over if you weren't doing anything wrong? Like they do that all the time and create justification after the cause.
Yeah,
So that is the gateway for police domination and persecution of the police. I mean, persecution of by the state. I think.
yeah, absolutely.
And like in Oklahoma, Oklahoma's a big private prison state, and they have quotas. They have arrangements with the state of Oklahoma saying we have to fill these prisons up to this level. This is what it costs per prisoner. This is what we're going to make per prisoner. In order for this arrangement to work, this is how many prisoners we have to have in the prison.
And that's
So
an interesting comparison if you look at the advent of the private prison industry in the 80s. Strongly correlates to the number of those incarcerated, um,
mhm.
just in general and for drug crime specifically. It's drastically increased, and the Department of Justice they've gone for stricter penalties at the request of those invested heavily in the private prison industry.
Yep,
And it's really disgusting, and it's
it is, and they're incentivized to arrest nonviolent drug offenders because they're not
yeah,
going to put up a fight when they drag them to jail. It's not going to be hard to arrest somebody, pulling somebody over, smell weed in your car, get out. They're not going to resist. I mean, they're
right.
usually peaceful people. That's who they want to get. And now that's being kind of taken away from them by this whole legalization effort, and the conversation is shifting, and that's their big source of income. So I think that segues into um, why are we seeing all this hubbub about DUI, NDUI? I don't. I mean, I live in Oklahoma. This is everywhere. ENDUI. It's just like rah rah police NDUI posters everywhere. I don't know
Yeah,
what it's like in other states, but they're. I think that they're trying to fill some
yeah.
quotas.
DUI is a big deal right now. I just moved from Colorado, but in Colorado, you can't drive down a highway without seeing
Mhm.
DUI enforcement signs.
It's not
They're
just here.
everywhere, and most people are on board with that because nobody wants drunk drivers out there.
Exactly, but I think there might be an ulterior motive behind
Definitely,
that whole campaign,
they're
and
maybe
it's somebody
moving some of their budget and effort to that realm because DUIs are. If you get someone for a DUI, they're gonna have to pay a very steep fine.
exactly, and that crime the state loves that crime because people don't dispute that that's a bad thing to do, drink
Yeah,
and drive.
and it's something you can test for scientifically. There's no like
Yes,
gray area really. If your blood alcohol content is a certain amount, it's different in different states, but I think it's a very
it's
similar amount.
yep, it's a
There's
wham
no
bam.
arguing if you're over that limit and you're operating an automobile, you are going to get a DUI and strict punishment.
Mm-hmm.
So at least in that regard, at least that one is somewhat fair. We've kind of there's not much disagreement that you should be able to drive over that amount. I think, or at least significantly over the
Mm-hmm.
legal blood alcohol limit. So nobody's really challenging that,
Right.
saying that
Well,
that's
it's
impossible.
hilarious too to see Uber and Lyft being discriminated against, in all these different towns for lots of reasons. But you know, there is no reason that you should get a DUI anymore with these services. It's so
Yeah,
cheap to take
yeah,
an Uber or a Lyft. I mean, they should be the NDUI thing. The fact that that's ramped up so much recently is kind of funny because I would think that the DUIs in general have gone down because of Uber and Lyft. But I guess there are studies out of Colorado or statistics that are showing that the DUI and opiate addiction or opiate overdose rate has reduced heavily since weed has been legalized, not for
that's
medical but
interesting.
recreationally.
Yeah, there's quite a few interesting statistics in Colorado about how positive the legalization of marijuana has been.
Right. And my only problem with the medical marijuana idea doing that is that you are allowing the state to assume what the benefits of marijuana are for you. And if there's
Yeah,
anything they are bad at, it's predicting the future and providing services.
right.
So,
And it kind of leads to this. When we just had medical in Colorado, a lot of people were going in to doctors and just if you told them you had pain, they could prescribe it to you, even if you weren't. So a lot of recreational users were getting approved for medical when they didn't have a medical condition. So the state was like forcing them to lie just so they could legally use
exactly.
their preferred substance in whatever matter
Yeah.
they wanted to. And it was kind of ridiculous. A lot of people thought that was ridiculous.
Hmm.
So it was kind of a joke that it was medical because for the most part, a lot of people were using it medicinally, but they weren't using it for what they were approved to use it for.
Exactly. It's
It's
just
like,
it becomes a big scam. There's
yeah,
something. So,
yeah. In most states there's only a couple approved uses of marijuana medically, and it was, like if you had cancer and were getting treated for your cancer, you could get approved. If you
right.
had maybe if you had AIDS, you could get approved, or pain. But like, who doesn't have pain? Everybody has pain every day.
Yeah.
I don't care how healthy you
Anxiety
are.
or,
My
um,
arm hurts when I whack it on the counter. I have pain.
well, one really funny thing that has happened is that since it's been legalized at any place in the United States, that this idea of these Mexican cartels is just kind of fading away from the pot community, not from other drugs. I don't
Yes.
think like from heroin or cocaine or whatever kind of hard drug you want to talk about. But as far as weed goes, but when it was totally illegal everywhere, I mean, usually people that had weed had other stuff too. You kind of got lumped into that crowd, especially
Yeah,
if
yeah.
it's
If you
like
were a
that
drug dealer, you
bro.
usually had access to a wide range of drugs. I think was
Yeah,
how it was.
and that's not something that you really experience in the weed community. I'd say the people don't act like drug addicts.
Yeah, because they're more like horticulturists. They're selling
Yeah.
you a plant, not a not a powderized special concentrated substance. They're just growing a plant and selling you a plant. I think that is very different.
Mm-hmm. Yep, grows right out of the ground. What is the problem? I don't get it. Um, but to take that to the next level, so there's legal weed somewhere in the United States. There is no incentive anymore for the cartels to bring that weed across the state lines. It's too dangerous, and it cannot compete with the
The
quality.
quality, yeah,
It cannot compete. So to take that to the next level, if it starts to become legally recreationally in multiple states that have borders next to each other, there's going to be price wars and quality wars
yeah,
across state lines about who has the best weed at the best price. That's what it's going to be about. And that
yeah,
will drive the price down and will ultimately destroy, hopefully, this idea of, well, okay, this is where, weed is legal, so we're going to tax the shit out of it. We're going to tax it so much that it almost doubles the cost of the actual material, just like cigarettes. The tax on cigarettes is insane. The price to produce a pack of cigarettes is like pennies.
yeah,
It's something ridiculously small.
yeah.
So,
And we have seen there's a gigantic black market in Colorado for marijuana, partially because they imposed such a heavy tax on marijuana. It's
mm,
ridiculous. I think it's like 10% or something, maybe more than 10%. I don't
yeah,
remember the exact number. It's so much that I think a lot of the big heavy users there don't even buy it at stores. I think they're just buying it on the black market. Not to
mm-hmm,
mention a lot of Colorado growers are shipping it to other states,
mm-hmm.
and it's creating a huge cash flow for Colorado.
Definitely. That's great. That's a great way for the state to gain some revenue.
Yeah, and it's pissed off the states around them, like Nebraska, Kansas, and Oklahoma, who tried to sue them
Mm-hmm.
for that. So you do have this discrepancy between states who have legalized and states who haven't, and I think it'd be beneficial for the states who haven't to go ahead and follow suit, just so that they can benefit financially and not have
Yep.
their money go out of state.
Yep.
I think it's been a big driver of the housing market in Colorado, because a lot of these, because they can't use federal banks, so they have to clean their money by buying houses, and that's what I've heard was occurring there. And the housing market blew up in Denver. A lot of that can be correlated to the rise of the legal marijuana,
Right.
which is an interesting side effect there.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's one. I mean, it's still in the baby stages, I guess, of being legal. So there are lots of aspects, business aspects of this that are not legal. Like, how do you pay? How do you pay tax on drugs that you sold or weed that you sold, or what do you do with all that money?
Yeah.
If you make it in if you make it in a
Yeah,
state where it's legal, you can't.
here's an interesting economic comparison. We should take a look at the DEA budget and compare that to how much tax money the federal government could make off of marijuana sales, and I bet it'd be more than $2 billion.
Yeah, what was their claimed annual budget like last year? 2 billion.
2.1 billion, I think.
2.1 billion.
I guess.
And I think the state of Colorado collected $14 million in tax revenue.
I think it's more than that.
First year.
I think it's more than that. Yeah, and that may not be including both medical and recreational sales. It'd be an interesting comparison. I don't know if they'd make $2 billion alone on just taxing marijuana, but if they did the same with other drugs, then I bet they would easily get. The federal government could get more than $2 billion
right
of tax revenue from the sale of drugs, and I imagine it would greatly reduce crime in the country. So I mean, I guess that's a good start to discuss where we are currently with this regime change to our new president and staff. So under there was a big change from the Bush administration to the Obama administration, because under Bush you still had the really hard drug war continuing, the one that he inherited from Clinton, who inherited it from his predecessors. You had under the Bush administration many of the medical marijuana dispensaries in California were raided by feds, and that was on the news, and it upset a lot of people. And I think they started to decrease it. And when Obama took the helm, they pretty much, for the most part, quit busting dispensaries unless they had ties to other criminal organizations. I think there was only a few cases in Colorado over the last 5 or so years of anything getting busted, and when they did, it was because they had very strong ties to other gang-related activities at that dispensary. And it's interesting because both Obama and his drug czar, Michael Botticelli, they were both completely against medical and recreational marijuana, but they chose not to have that enforced, I guess. Or the DOJ chose not to enforce that for the most part, unless they were tied to other crimes. And I guess now the question people are having is, will the Trump administration continue that policy?
Yeah, the fact that they did that and they didn't remove the laws, but they didn't enforce the laws, just shows that the ideology is there supporting the ending of prohibition of marijuana, but they're just not willing to take on the institution. They're not willing to take on the laws or the state or whatever, because it's a big animal, and there's a lot of people involved that are making a lot of money. So
yeah, just imagine how much money is laundered by banking institutions every year for money.
Oh yeah, imagine how much. Imagine seriously how much money is laundered by our government. Or that is, imagine how much money our government makes off of persecuting its own citizens for nonviolent crimes.
Yeah, definitely.
what is that number? That number is insane, whatever that is. And how many people are employed by the state that whose job it is to persecute nonviolent criminals and then to judge them and to work in the court and work in the prisons? Like it's a whole industry. So if that one if pot goes down as legal, then I think it's only a matter of time before people start to realize what the drug war really is, because
Yeah,
the drug war exists in spite of the lessons we should have learned from alcohol prohibition. I mean, as soon as
absolutely.
alcohol was made illegal, um, people rioted and drank underground, and the quality went way down of everything. People were mixing, rubbing alcohol with,
It became
uh,
dangerous.
yeah,
Yeah, the
people
rise of Al Capone and other crime lords.
they're just selling crap to people, and it's like totally in the black market. And at the same time, while you have those criminals making money off of a monopolized market, the state gets to come in and persecute people, take them to jail, fine them, garnish their wages, whatever they want. So, what did we learn from that whole situation? Here we
Apparently
are
nothing.
again, doing the exact same thing, and we repealed all that, and now, and like Oklahoma just now repealed. We still had a form of alcohol
Yep.
prohibition up till very recently,
There's
which
still
is,
dry counties in Oklahoma, right?
I think there's still dry counties, and you can't, like, liquor stores aren't open on Sundays. You can't buy cold anything in a liquor store.
Yeah,
The
it's
beer that
ridiculous.
they can only sell beer at a gas station, and the beer that they sell there can only be 3.2% by whatever alcohol, by whatever. They have to reduce the amount of alcohol in the beer to sell it at those freaking gas stations, and that
Yeah,
is like
it's
that's a
absurd.
protected. That's a law. That's a law in the state. It's just been repealed recently, but it's still going to take 2 years for that to go away. So we're still, that's just how behind the times we are. Like, prohibition obviously didn't work with alcohol. In Oklahoma, we're still dealing with parts of that. There's still elements of that have survived.
Oh
So
yeah,
the lesson isn't being, the message isn't being received by everybody, but I think the majority of people are starting to come around. And as soon as pot's legalized, mostly across the board, I think it's only a matter of time before people say, well, I hear that there are medical benefits to not only DMT, but MDMA and probably cocaine
LSD.
and other
Yeah,
things too.
psilocybin mushrooms. Yeah, it's gonna.
Psilocybin or what? Yeah.
Yeah, in the case of MDMA was really interesting. I believe that was maybe around 1990 when that then the DEA decided to schedule it,
Mm-hmm.
and despite their own committee suggested that they do not schedule it Schedule One because a lot of very prominent researchers were saying, hey, this has incredible potential as treatment for multiple conditions, and despite their own DEA committee recommending they don't schedule it Schedule One, it was scheduled Schedule One.
Right.
That says
Exactly.
scheduled enough there.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that was a glaring example there of their own hypocrisy. And someone very high up obviously didn't want the public to have access to it, even though their own administration, the people working there who did the research, said it should not be Schedule One.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that kind of just shows that somebody high up is manipulating
Yeah.
us with this drug war.
Definitely. And as much as it is a money thing and a like a state domination thing in my mind. If you want to go, I mean, I guess down the rabbit hole a little more, it's like a mental, it's like a mental enslavement to me.
Sure.
This whole idea of the drug war, because you realize, I mean, the first year I'd say that I smoked pot, the thing that I realized, the only way to describe this is to break the conditioning. I started to wake up and research stuff for myself and
Yeah.
think outside the box.
Like, what else did they lie about? If they lied to me about
Exactly.
this, yeah,
That kind of overtook me. What else am I being lied to about?
yeah. You're always told, don't do drugs, go to school, do this and this. America is a force for good.
Yeah, people go to South America and have life changing experiences drinking ayahuasca that contains DMT.
Yeah.
Or some people have reported, actually, like Robert Strassman's book, Spirit Molecule. People break cycles of addiction. People who are hopelessly
Yeah.
addicted to things who
There's a
do
lot of examples of that.
weekly doses or whatever for whatever amount of time of DMT break their total addiction cycle.
But it's easy to point to the '60s and the hippie movement and say, oh, look at all these people who abuse psychedelics. And yeah, if you use too many psychedelics, it can most definitely have negative effects
Yep.
on your life, on your brain function. But I mean, a lot of the medical benefits have been at very low doses, much, much lower than people would generally take for recreational
Definitely.
use.
There's a lot of light being shined on that subject.
And I think microdosing of psychedelics is a new topic that people are starting to research and get into.
Definitely. Yeah, there's something to be said for that. And, psychedelics are very, very powerful things, and they're not, as much as people like to think, well, these crazy people taking psychedelics, they're nuts doing these drugs for recreational purposes. But on the whole, that is not why people do psychedelics.
Or at least it shouldn't be. Yeah.
At least it shouldn't be. Yeah, you're not going to have a recreational experience on psychedelics. So,
Yeah.
but it just turns out as time goes on that there are not only reported benefits by their users, but reported benefits by the medical community, like MDMA. I think what psychiatrists are doing test trials on people with MDMA and curing them of their
Yeah.
depression after no drug would work.
Yeah.
Them would work.
Apparently, it has incredible therapeutic benefits, which was what the DEA committee found that was investigating it. But they decided we couldn't experience those benefits ever.
Right. So all these drugs that are illegal actually have benefits, and all the ones that are illegal are the ones killing everybody. What the hell is going on?
It's the way it's supposed to be. It's part of your enslavement. Anyway, do you have any thoughts on how the Trump administration will handle this? With the appointment of Jeff Sessions to Attorney General.
I don't know. He's pretty anti-drug, but I think that as time has gone on, I was not a supporter really of. I didn't vote for presidents. I didn't vote for President Trump, but I kind of have his back now. I kind of support him. He seems like he's following through with his promises, and he's being mischaracterized. But he's also like take the torture issue with Trump. He was pro-torture. That was one thing I didn't like about him.
Yeah.
And as soon as his what was his chief of defense or whatever, Secretary of Defense was put in, Mattis, Mad Dog Mattis, he talked to Trump and explained to him why it doesn't work, and now Trump's like, okay, I admit it. Yeah, I came back. I'm not for torture.
Yeah, if you torture something, they'll tell you what you want to hear.
Exactly,
and
but
it's bad for public relations.
Yes, it's obvious or at least Trump is using the language that he's all about protecting.
I also think that the torture issue is kind of a false superficial issue, because I think the behind the scenes in black military projects or places like Guantanamo Bay, they just tortured people anyway, regardless of whether it was legal or constitutional. They do what they can get away with. But yeah, that's beside. We're kind of getting off topic here, but
no, yeah, I brought that up. I brought that up because he was willing to change on. Trump was willing to change on something in the interest of humanity, in the interest of human life. But which makes me think that he is he observes what's going on. I think if he sees that really legalization is helping people, and that CBD or marijuana in general is helping people with epilepsy, Parkinson's, and AIDS, and all of this stuff, that I think he might do something drastic.
Well, yeah, and he's been pro-medical marijuana. He's been consistent on that issue for years and years now, while he's been inconsistent on almost every other issue. He has continually been for medical marijuana. Mm-hmm. And he has flip-flopped a little bit on recreational, and he chose not to talk about both these issues during the election. And I imagine that was because he knew he needed the support of every Republican, basically, and he
Mm-hmm.
couldn't. A lot of, especially the elderly Republicans, are still believers in the drug war, and
Yes,
they would not have supported him had he been pro marijuana. So he was
you're right.
kind of quiet about it, but I think he has been very consistent on medical, and hopefully he follows through with that. And I mean, I don't think we got to start slow here. You know, you can't just snap your fingers and legalize everything, but
No,
we're
and
on.
there,
We seem
like
to be on the right track for sure as a country.
that, and there are definitely bigger issues to tackle before the weed issue or the legalization issue
Yeah,
comes. I mean, that's a big issue, but I think there are bigger
there's a
things on
lot more
his
pressing
plate to worry
things.
about.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that will conclude our episode on the current state of the drug war. Expect us to discuss this at length in other episodes.
Thanks for tuning in.